Gotcha.
Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Velyn Hawkins, and I'm your host of the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth Show. And I want to welcome you to another episode with our esteemed guest today. I guess you can see the vegetable queen, Claire Stanley. Claire is a certified functional diagnostic nutrition health practitioner located in Mercer Island, Washington. And she founded Creative Balance Health in 2010. She supports women to develop self-compassion, become empowered, and feel validated with their health. And after years of dealing with medical gaslighting, and many of us know that story, even though we may not have thought about it in terms of gaslighting, we now understand what it has been and what it feels like, and the trial and error that she underwent to overcome her own chronic fatigue, weight gain, and autoimmune health issues. She knew there was a better way to balance self-care, work, and personal life with restoring health. And today she helps women in midlife take back their control of their energy, their digestive health, their weight, and do it in a natural way. And that's what we're all about here on the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth Show. And that is sharing the resources and the wisdom from women who are helping other women and men to resolve these issues. Because we know what it feels like when you're in a gaslighting situation, when you're looking for that nutritional advice and you are questioning whether or not what you're getting is really backed by science, effective, and will work for you. We all know that everyone's an individual. We have, our individual gut issues, digestion, hormones. And, a lot of us have also been on the path of detoxification, which is good, but you want to do it in a way that your body actually gets the most out of it. Claire has agreed to be our guest today, and she's going to talk about some of the things that she's doing with personalized diets and self-care plans that she's providing her clients. And she's going to tell you some of the wisdom and the benefits of doing things a natural way. So welcome, Claire. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Velyn. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, I want you to know that Claire is doing great work. And as the owner of Creative Balance Health, she's helping hundreds of women. And I love the fact that this whole functional diagnostic nutrition comes into play. And we're going to talk about that too, because there's some things that we can walk away with understanding that will help us to pay better attention to our own health and communicate with our doctors better. And I love the fact that, Claire, you're out there as a speaker and an educator, really helping women to come into this space of creating this healthy balance in life. And let's see here, there we go. So again,
Hello.
welcome to the show. I'm so glad to be here talking with you today.
Likewise, I'm really excited to be here. So, what can I tell you?
Well, let's start from the top. How did you get on this journey? What prompted
Oh my
you
goodness.
into this? Yeah.
I've always had a passion for food, like farm to table. I think that's sort of where the vegetable queen came, because I love my veggies and I was really into cooking them so that they would retain nutrition. And this is long before I got into this, and I was always also interested in holistic health. I just loved the way walking around like food co-ops and health food stores would make me feel. And I was just so intrigued. I grew up in New England and things were a little bit more natural and sort of crunchy granola where I grew up. And so I always liked the sort of like, oh, this is how farm things grow on farms, and seeing that, happy animals and happy plants. And so I was just really into all of that. And I think for me, how I got into this, the field that I've been in for the past decade or so. I had my own health issues, as a lot of practitioners do. If that's what brings them to the field. I was working in advertising and media for many, many years, which is very stressful. And then, I went through a divorce, and I was taking care of my father who had Alzheimer's. And so, and I was very involved with my own businesses and committees, and nothing too unusual for a woman in her mid 40s. And all of a sudden, I just couldn't get out of bed. And one day, and I was covered head to toe in eczema, and my face was all puffed out, and my hair was falling out. And so I just couldn't figure out what was wrong. And I'd always been very healthy. And so I went, as one does, I went to my doctor, wanted to get some answers to fix this. And I just really wasn't being told anything. I was saying, oh, your labs are fine. This is normal for your age. Have you tried exercise? I'm like, yeah, like every day, that's what I've been doing. Obviously something's different. So I just, like I said, I thought there had to be a better way. And so it took me a while to figure out what was going on with me. And in the process, I did lots of research, and I tried all sorts of modalities until I finally got the right lab tests, and we were able to figure out what was wrong with me. But I never, even at that point, didn't think this was something I was going to do. But years later, I had one of the large accounts I was working on ended. My youngest was off to college, and I'm like, what do I want to do when I grow up? And approaching 50 at the time. And I said, well, I should do what people come to me for. They always ask me about cooking, or they ask me about holistic health, because they know I've done so much research on it. And that's really what prompted me to go back to school to get my various certifications. And once I was there, and I found out that I could also get a different certification, but one that would allow me to provide the same functional lab tests that had helped me finally, so many years ago, I was like, great. And so I went on and did the FDN certification to do that. And it was just something I'd always become very impassioned about. My son also had some issues that I realized years and years ago, like corn syrup was not a good thing for young children. And, so I think even before my own health issues, I was looking at what I can do to support my children in a more natural way, that even though I was feeding them very healthfully, there was things that I was finding in things, like citrus or other orange juice or foods that were marketed towards children that were so unhealthy. And so I think I just been really, without realizing, I was sort of very much an advocate for natural health. I was an advocate for natural health. So that's what brought me there.
What an amazing story. And I love that, because many of us have found that the work that we're doing now has been a part of our journey to get here. And it's made it so much more meaningful for us as well. And in the stories that we have to share, I mean, that's one of the things that this show is all about, sharing our health stuff, our wealth stuff, and our wisdom around the journey that we've had. So I love that you've done this. I love the focus that you put on the children as well. I think that a lot of us as parents and grandparents, we're looking at, what we can do for ourselves, but the trickle down effect is really important where our kids are concerned too. And, we had talked about your 5 things to create flow in your body. And I do want to bring this in because, and I want to keep pinging into the children's aspect of this too. It's something that I'm really a lot more aware of these days, because children are in a really difficult position with the way that we've been marketed to, with fast food and parents as busy as they are, we just sometimes don't find that we have told ourselves that we have the capacity and the time to do food nutritiously for our children. We don't even know what nutritious maybe even looks like. So why don't we start off,
Yeah.
first of all, tell us what your take is on what is nutritious for us to kind of connect to.
I think I was lucky. I grew up, I'm the first American in my family, so my parents were European. And so I actually didn't have fast food until I was in my teens. Where I grew up, there wasn't a McDonald's, there wasn't Burger King, there wasn't any of the fast food. And so I didn't really enjoy the taste of it when I had it much later in life, when I finally moved to an area where they had it. Um, and I think in terms of children, I know that I just wanted my kids to have as wide a palette of tastes as possible when they were younger, and also got them very involved with cooking. Their grandparents owned a restaurant, and so food was very much a big part of our life, and learning how to prepare it. And it wasn't perfect. My son was definitely liked his hamburgers and chicken nuggets and things like that. But when he was in college, I think it was sophomore year, when he was started to move into his own place, he would call me and say, "Okay, Mom, how do I cook?" And I was so, it's like, finally, it even if it wasn't very much like a cooking thing when they were younger, I think that they still absorbed it. And then when they got a little older, they wanted to do that for themselves. So both my kids are love to cook for themselves and healthy. And so I just think it's introducing it, whether it's, sharing a garden, or showing kids how food grows. And exposing them to as many different flavors as possible. For me, I think there is a way to do it. Of course, they're gonna, maybe go to a friend's house and they're gonna get sweets or things like that. So I think it's just showing how good food can taste, as opposed to restricting and saying, "Oh, this is something you can't have," which I don't think works either, because you always want it. I always did want some of the sugary things that my neighbors would have growing up. And so I think there's, again, balance to be had in it. So modeling and taking kids to farmers markets and taking them to farms, or seeing where food grows. For me, it stuck with me. It was something I always liked to do. In terms of nutrition, I think it's kind of, whatever. I got into the nutrition of food not from a health perspective, but because I used to cater and I was really into cooking. I recognized that food that was grown, um, from the soil, and what was put into it, it tasted better. And so I actually got into it because I read, why does food not taste the same that I remember as a kid? Or, things like chicken. Why is this chicken so bland and flavored, no flavor? Or why did the tomatoes don't taste very good? And the more I looked into that, just on a flavor perspective, I understood, it's like, oh, obviously they're not getting the nutrition, the things that this food needs to grow to taste the way it was supposed to, has been taken away because of corporate farming and shipping and all the things that are being done to our food sources right now, just so it stays shelf stable, or you can ship it, but it doesn't taste as well. And it made sense that what you put into your body, whatever the food consumes, our, like, the vegetables and our livestock or things like that, it tastes better when it's more nutrition, receiving more nutrition. The same thing for us, we do better. And so it really was from that very simple understanding that we are what we eat, and what we eat is what they eat as well. And so it's really very simple when it comes to that. And food can be simple. You go to some restaurants and you have these amazing meals, and yet it's actually very simple because they're taking food that's the highest quality. These great chefs are looking things, they're not necessarily concerned about nutrition, but they are concerned about how things taste. And it just so happens that those are the things where the vegetables are brighter and they have more flavor. To me, it just makes intuitive sense that way.
Nice, nice. And I think that's a great segue into also your 5 things to create flow in the body. And
Right.
what do you start with as a focus?
So the five foundations, FDN, functional diagnostic nutrition, believes in, they're sort of foundational to successful health. There's an acronym, it's DRESS, which stands for D is for diet. So nutrition is generally where I start. And for most of my clients, it's the thing that they understand the best. It's the thing that they can relate to more easily. And so diet is very unique and to each person. I look at what's in, their genetic makeup. I look at their metabolism. Some people are able, how fast do they burn through food? Food is fuel for us. And so I look at it that way is, which types of foods, what ratios of proteins to carbohydrates to fats, work best for each unique individual. And that's something that's, based on their own genetics. And so I look to see, are they, do they burn food quickly? Are they not burning through it? Do they need heavier foods to kind of keep them satiated longer, rather than, or do they need lighter foods because whatever they're eating is making them feel very groggy or tired? I don't look at it about weight, but it is, comes to bear that if their body is fueled properly and their metabolism is able to burn properly, then chances are they're more likely to lose the extra weight that they're concerned about. But look at things, are they someone who's very sort of a personality, and like go, go, go? Or are they someone who is more relaxed and maybe needs food that's going to be a little bit more stimulating, again, to kind of create a balance to their metabolism? The others, dress, we've got rest. Sleep hygiene is really important that we get our quality sleep, 7 to 8 hours a night. And so I'll look at things that are going on. If someone is waking up in the middle of the night, oftentimes that can point to some sort of gut distress or a pathogen. Or it could be, just something as simple as their room is too warm for them and they're waking up, or they may be having inflammation in the body. Pain is one of the largest or biggest reasons why people aren't sleeping properly. So we'll look at that. Exercise, for dress, so DRESS, exercise. We all want to move our bodies. Unfortunately, I see a lot of women who are blaming themselves for the situation they're in, which is why I talk about self-compassion and being validated with their health. And so the doctor may be very dismissive and tell them, well, have you tried exercising more? And so these poor women are just exercising and exercising, or stressing that they're not exercising enough, not realizing that maybe some of their choices on how they're moving their body is actually creating more inflammation and making it even more difficult for them to lose the weight that they need to, because their body is in such a state that, that it's just not going to happen when you're in this inflammatory mode. So we investigate other modalities that may be gentler for them while their body is restoring and repairing. Or it could be something as simple as, typical putting my coach hat on is, how can we fit in this extra walk with your grandchild this week because this is something you said you wanted to do, or you wanted to do. You can balance connecting with a family member and having some fun and relaxing, but also moving your body in a gentle way at the same time, which leads to stress management, which is the stress. Stress covers a huge area of things. We talk about hidden stressors in the body, things that are causing inflammation. That can be from diet, food reactivities. It could be from gut pathogens or an imbalance of bacteria or something going on there. But there's also the obvious, the emotional stressors, sort of our existential angst that's happening. It could be environmental stressors, things that we're putting on our body or using to clean our homes. Or maybe there's mold in the household or something that's disrupting our hormones or causing inflammation in it. And then there's physical stressors where we see a lot of times where there's inflammation in the joints. That's when I might recommend some sort of body work in addition, or going to a chiropractor if there's been an injury. But all of these everything works together in our body. We're not siloed. And so, I don't believe in chasing symptoms, because you may have like a rash like I did. I had eczema all over, and, I went to a doctor and they gave me prednisone, but they never asked why I had the eczema to begin with. And it wasn't because I had a skin disease. It was because I had all sorts of stress and inflammation going on in my gut that was impacting my hormones, that was impacting everything else. And so trying to look at things in a more holistic way. And then the last part of dress would be the supplementation, and that's like supplement support as needed. I use supplements in my practice, but usually it's to support a metabolic system that isn't working optimally at that point, usually due to a hidden stress. And so it could be something where a lot of people feel like if they're having digestive issues, they have too much acid, and it's the opposite. It's typically the truth, where most of us are, especially with stress, have too little stomach acids. And so maybe we're supporting their digestion with better enzymes, maybe including HCl if warranted, but also being very careful to look at what's happening in the body to make sure things aren't contraindicated. A lot of women, people who have stress, have a bacterial imbalance with a lot of something called H. pylori, and certain digestive enzymes can actually make things worse. I'll look at probiotics to try to rebalance the healthy bacteria in the body. But again, depending on what I find, which is why the lab testing is so important. If someone has, SIBO or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, a lot of probiotics that are wonderful, but they may have a strain in there that's actually going to be problematic for someone that has SIBO. And so I do feel, I'm not against doctors. I go to them myself and I love them. I just feel it's important to be empowered and to ask for the right questions, ask for the right tests, knowing, I think something's wrong and something needs to be tested. And so just speaking up for oneself. And so just knowing, science is very important, to know what is actually happening in the body, but to also look at all of the different systems going on in the body at the same time. So then where to start to do more of the natural lifestyle interventions or changes, where we can tweak the diet, recognize that our body needs to heal. What can we do to minimize inflammation in it? Is our liver working properly? A lot of women come to me after doing cleanses that they've been told are these miracle cleanses, only to feel terrible. And we find that, well, your liver, because of the stress, because of things that have been going on in your life, isn't clearing those toxins that are being cleansed properly. And so unfortunately, a lot of the toxins get recirculated in the body. So by doing science, by doing these clinical labs, we're able to get a good idea of what's the current state of health in the body, and then proceed carefully to restore health, and do it in steps, and do it in a very logical way, so that I don't want someone feeling terrible while they're getting better, because again, they have life, they have businesses to run, families, personal things to do. And so that's where the balance comes into this, is that, and I'm not going to, sweeping changes where they have to turn their lives upside down with diets. It's not realistic. And so the balance part of this was a huge part for me, whereas like I'm a single mom at the time, and I have things I have to do. And I just felt that the practitioners, whether it's traditional or alternative, didn't see me in a realistic way, understanding what my life was like and how can I easily adapt some of these healthful things. I want to be healthy, but I need to be able to do this in a realistic way.
Mhm. That's great. And I think that you identified something that, especially in today's environment, we have women who, even if they're career women, that many have something going on in the side, a small business on the side, along with the family and, the civic involvement. And then we're trying to take care of ourselves. It really brings in the whole self-compassion piece that many women
Yeah.
just are, they get to an age where they're finally learning to understand what that means and the importance of it. And I love your 5 things, the dress. Um, and I, what was occurring to me as you were talking about them is that there's a golden thread of diet that goes through every one of them. With resting, if you're not eating right, you're not really going to rest well. You mentioned that. And exercise, the same thing. You're fueling your body and you want to do everything that you need to do, including exercise. So eating the right things there. And stress, let's take a minute and talk about stress. You talked about hidden stressors, emotional, environmental,
Yeah.
physical. And stress is the number 1 killer of women today,
It is.
mainly through heart disease. And most women don't know that because we've had this amazing focus on cancer, breast cancer, women with other forms of cancer. Yet heart disease kills more women than all of the cancers combined. And what's the underlying cause? For the most part, it's stress. So let's
It's
talk about.
stress which causes inflammation. Yeah, it's a big deal. So stress is probably the number one thing I talk about. I definitely talk a lot about diet, but I think probably the number one thing I try to educate my clients about is the role of stress. For years and years, I thought, I knew that stress was really dangerous, but because I felt that I'm the person that you want to come to in a stressful situation. I would remain calm. I would be very organized. I thrived in a stressful, or so I thought I thrived in a stressful environments. And so I thought, well, I'm together. I've got myself together. And so I don't fall apart when I'm stressed. So therefore stress wasn't impacting me. And I think that's what a lot of women I know who are business owners, who maybe are A personality, that are successful and they're running all sorts of things. And as women, that's what we do. We push through, right? We teach ourselves we're going to push through because so many other people are dependent on us. And we usually don't take care of ourselves first. We're taking care of everyone else. We are caretakers. But we're not understanding that even though we may not be falling apart visibly when we're in a stressful situation, our bodies sort of the brain and their primal response is to still be aware of a stress and to flood our bodies with cortisol, which is what starts the inflammation in the body. And so it's I would tell everyone I'm not stressed. Sure, I've got it's stressful situations, but I'm not stressed. But of course, that was completely incorrect, as I could found out later, years later, in my mid 40s, when my health just completely fell apart. So I think that we can't, I mean, and then the argument is like, well, life's stressful, things happen, and they do. So I think just being aware of, yes, this is a situation that's heightened, or to be more in touch with your own bodies. Do you recognize when, you start feeling your stomach tightening, or you're starting to have these little niggly, I've got a headache, or I'm having trouble sleeping, or my stomach's not feeling quite right. I think once we recognize the signs that our body has been trying or maybe screaming at us that, yeah, we are under stress, and then it doesn't have to become a full blown incident where we can say, okay, yeah, I had a really rough day at work. You know what? I think I'm going to go meditate. Maybe I'll use some essential oils. I'll run a bath. I'll take a calm walk around, the lake or something, or, go with my partner and hold hands and just talk. Think of things that we can do in a way to sort of wind down, to minimize the stress, or do something fun, go dancing, literally shake it off, shake it out, do these things where we can try to get rid of the stress that's becoming trapped in our bodies, out to release that, so that we don't allow our bodies to get so inflamed.
Beautiful. Love those suggestions. And brings me to another question. You talked about the science around all of this, right?
Mhm.
And, as a whole food, plant-based vegan advocate myself, my labs told me that the things that I thought I was getting from eating meat was not really the best source for me. I had to go where the meat source was, which is the plants. And it also brought me into a new space of, the veganism. And I had to understand what veganism was, because I thought it was a diet. And I looked at, I knew a lot of vegans, or I met a lot of vegans over the course of the last few years, and they were unhealthy vegans. And I thought,
Yeah.
wow, what is that all about? And then I learned about the impact of processed foods and the processed
Process.
foods
Yeah.
that we
Terrible.
that are poisoning us. And getting to the science and the lab testing that you talked about. Tell us a little more about the value of understanding what those tests are. We go to the doctor, we say, I want to get this test, I want to get that test. The test results come back, and the doctor says everything's good or maybe not. And we go with what they say. How can we better understand what some of these lab tests really are telling us? If there's something else we should be asking for, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think two, the big tests that I can think of that may impact a lot of women and a lot of people listening to this, would be thyroid. A lot of women are dealing with thyroid conditions, or suspect that they may have a thyroid problem. There's some pretty basic tells, where your face puffs out. If they're not able to lose weight, all of a sudden there's a different composition in their body, eyebrows are going away, things like that, or even just a family history of it. I have a family history of hypothyroidism. My mother had it at a very young age. And I had been tested by doctors since I was a child. I mean, before I was a teenager, on a fairly regular basis. And I was always told that, nope, my labs are normal. What I didn't realize until much later was that they were just checking my TSH level, or total, thyroid hormone. And that's what almost all doctors do. But thyroid is actually, there's so many different elements of it. There's T3, there's T4, there's an autoimmune component of, checking for antibodies. And so until I had that test, and even the naturopath that I first went to that realized that I had what was referred to as adrenal fatigue or leaky gut and these types of things years ago, she didn't even test my thyroid accurately because I wasn't even then diagnosed with being hypothyroid, even though I was even being tested with her. And so it's thyroid is stress related. Usually it is as part of the stress hormones. You've got the hypothalamus, the thyroid, the pituitary, and the adrenals are all related to this. The fatigue issues used to be referred to as adrenal fatigue, which was a bit of a misnomer because that's all of those different parts of our bodies and glands are involved with it. But it's really important that if you're showing some of these symptoms, and especially if you have a history of thyroid conditions in your family, and at this point there's been enough awareness that it is probably likely that a family member that might have, make sure that when you're being tested that they're testing you, they're doing a full panel on your thyroid. It's really, really important. So I think that's one of the big areas where I see improper testing being done. The other area has to do with food sensitivity and food reactivity. There's like a lot of tests you can buy on the internet that anyone can just buy themselves, which I really advocate not doing. Because what's important is to understand what is the test, what are the markers the test is actually looking at. Same with the thyroid. With food sensitivity, there's all sorts of different markers involved that you can be looking at. There's IgA, immunoglobulin A, or G, which is sort of like short range inflammation versus long-term inflammation. IgE is what people get when they go get sort of those pinpricks on the back. That's a true allergy, is an IgE, and only a few tests I know of actually labs use all of these markers. There's other things that you could be looking at, lectins and histamines. And then with the food sensitivity in itself, there's sort of the whole food. Are you reactive to the whole food, or are you reactive to individual proteins in a particular food? Gluten is one of the foods that we hear about, and wheat being people having problems with. And there's, and I had this question for years, it's like, am I celiac? Am I not celiac? I was told different things for many years. I had one test done where I was told, oh, you're definitely celiac. And I found out that they had just run a genetic marker test on me. And all they had determined is that I did have the celiac markers, but that doesn't in itself mean that I'm celiac. So you have to really understand what it is they're looking at to be diagnosed as celiac. There's actually 3 things that have to happen. And I only had one of the different areas, which was the genetic markers. Doesn't mean that I am celiac. So understand what the labs are looking at. For gluten, some tests said I had sensitivities, others didn't. It was very confusing, and I didn't present. I didn't have stomach distress, and I just didn't really understand why I was being told I shouldn't eat these things. I was like, well, I eat organically. I eat cleaner than anyone I know. It doesn't make sense. Turned out, once I got a hold of the right labs, that that were actually showing breakdowns of individual proteins. The proteins for gluten or one of the gluten proteins I'm highly sensitive to impacts my brain, which made a lot more sense because it's, that explains the foggy brain. And there's a history of Alzheimer's in my family, and I do have those genetic markers. And so this finally makes sense. The proteins that would impact my gut, I was green, I was fine with. So understanding, that's where I think science is really important. Not only to get those answers, but for me, it's behavioral. It was really hard for me to agree to give up gluten or dairy or some of these other foods that I was being told, well, maybe you should do it. It's a hard thing to ask people to do, and it's a hard thing to comply with, especially when I'm not given an answer that really made sense to me, that I could see, because it wasn't correlating. And when I have this information in front of me, it's like, okay, I get it. And I find the same thing with my clients too. Most of them come to me, and they're not eating fast food. They know how to eat, but they've told, well, maybe I shouldn't be eating this, or even if they know, oh, I feel terrible, but it's still not enough. I mean, feeling terrible oftentimes isn't enough for us to give up something if it's inconvenient or we feel deprived. But I find that having those lab results helps my clients really make those behavioral changes that they've been wanting to make, because they have enough of a reason to do
Right.
that. And so I feel like I just find that they're super useful. Instead of guessing, most of us, myself included, we've had this trial and error with our health, and we've tried different things and they may not work. And we start to get skeptical, right? And we don't know who to believe anymore. And we're a little embarrassed because we've been spending a lot of money trying to get answers and nothing seems to work. And so by the time most of my clients come to me, I know they've been through this. And so I'm trying to do everything in my power to earn their trust and to say, look, this isn't me just telling you this. Let's look and see what's going on in your body. Let's be health detectives and see what's your body telling you what's going on there. And then we can make decisions accordingly. And it's once they see, oh, now I understand. Now I can take empowerment. I can take ownership. I see this is what's happening in my body. There's a benchmark. Then I really tend to not see too many compliance issues with my clients. They get it. They're like, oh, now I finally understand. I finally have the answers I've been looking for. So now I understand why I'm going to make these changes with my life. It just makes everything sort of fall into place a lot easier.
That makes so much sense. And it's actually what we need. I mean, that's the logic that our brains need, that our subconscious can see, that it can help with supporting us to move in a more positive direction. So let's really quickly touch on a little more on the support system of supplements that we might be able to
Yeah.
provide ourselves. Because I know a lot of people, they take all of the supplements. I was one of them. And without really realizing that, again, bioindividuality, we may need some of them, we may not. Some may be actually causing a little bit of harm, where others that we do need, we're not even getting. So tell us a little bit about how you view this whole aspect of supplementation.
I look at it as support. I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to not be taking any supplements. I would like to get all of my nutrition from nutritious food and clean water and sunlight, things like that. But there's sort of that idyllic situation, which is great when we're sort of younger, maybe, and in a better state of health. But the truth is that after many years of stress that a lot of us have gone through, our bodies are, some of the innate systems in our body may not be functioning as well as they should. And so I don't look at supplements as a substitute for good nutrition, but it's more of as a help, a restorative, some sort of support if the system isn't functioning as well as it should be. Due to years of stress, we may find that our stomachs are in maybe stress could also be because we're not eating the right foods, we're not getting the right sleep. Maybe we've been, having rich meals and a little bit too much wine or things like that. And our stomachs are just out of sorts. And so I look at supplements as what can we do to reduce inflammation in the body. If there's a lot of oxidative stress, there's things like the EPA, DHA, the fish oils, things like that are good to get a very high dose concentration of minerals and micronutrients that can help reduce inflammation in the body. I probably use supplements most in terms of digestion. If we're finding that the body is not able to digest food properly, some people we find are having trouble with lipids or fats, or they're not able to break down proteins properly. And so, or maybe they're just turning it, trying to do more of a vegetarian or vegan diet, but they're having all sorts of gastrointestinal issues with it because the body doesn't necessarily have the right enzymes to help break down all the extra carbohydrates. So looking at things like digestive enzymes or probiotics to help the digestion. I look at other supplements in terms of if there's a lot of inflammation in the gut, what can we do to repair things called like gastrointestinal impermeability or leaky gut, where inflammation is basically created little openings, micro openings in the gut lining. So we want to restore that. And, things like there's different types of collagens or things that we can use to help restore the gut mucosa. And so it's stronger. And then once we can get that inflammation down, our body is able to actually absorb the nutrients in the food better. A lot of times people's like, well, I keep getting tested and I have my vitamin D levels are low or other things are low, and I'm taking all these supplements and I don't understand it. It's not working. And the reason is because there's been so much inflammation in the gut that the microvilli that line our gut, they're sort of like their little fingers, and that's where the nutrition gets absorbed. But if we have like these little openings, then the microvilli get blunted because of inflammation. That's why our bodies aren't absorbing the nutrition that we're actually eating. And so it's reparative. It's like, what can we do to repair the gut lining? What can we do to repair the gut mucosa? What can we do to help our liver process toxins and things better so it clears our body faster again so that we can reduce inflammation? What can we do to help our body digest, break down, whether it's the fats, the proteins, or the carbohydrates better so that we get the nutrition? And then because of inflammation, I do find that pretty much everyone I see has some sort of pathogen in the gut that needs to be taken care of, whether it's H. pylori from stress, or if we have bacterial imbalances. A lot of women are dealing with fungal infections, which are incredibly opportunistic when we have inflammation, things like candida, or any of those kinds of things that can be very difficult to get rid of. And the reason that they're having a hard time getting rid of them is because they're not supporting the body properly to reduce the inflammation so that the environment isn't so opportunistic for these pathogens. So there's different blends of herbs and things like that specific to the pathogen that we can use to help eradicate it in a healthy, gentle way, without wiping out all the good flora that we want in our bodies. And so those are really the main areas that I look at. There's some allopathic things too. If someone's really dragging with their energy, and they don't have high blood pressure, we can use things like licorice root to sort of help them feel a little bit clearer and a little bit more energized. Things that'll make, or there's different things that we can do for sleep. Again, more allopathically. I'll look at melatonin, but things like that on a very temporary basis, just to kind of to help. Everything is really to restore homeostasis in the body and to reduce inflammation so that the body can heal.
Beautiful. I love that. And I think that with that, you've answered a lot of questions that women have about supplements, and the value of taking them or not taking them. And I love how you started with, we would all love to get every bit of nutrients from the food that we eat, but we know that in today's world and with the lives that we lead, that's kind of difficult, not impossible, but there are opportunities for supplements to support us. And it's not something that we should think about. And help me, and let's kind of wrap things up with this one thought. It's not something that we should think about always being on. Like medications, a lot of illnesses or chronic illnesses, doctors will say you're going to be on this medication for the rest of your life. And I know of circumstances where people have heard that, yet changing their diet and lifestyle, it's eliminated those medications. And so is the
Absolutely.
same thing possible with the supplements that we may need for support?
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely, I think everything is together. So again, we're doing this where I'm not just advocating only do, supplements that are going to make you feel better. That's actually the last thing that in the DRESS acronym, if you recall, we start with diet. We want to make sure that we're getting the right foods, the right mixes, and it's, in there, and it's for each person. Some people may need more protein, others may need more carbs. They may find that, some people, if they want to do vegan, they have to play with the right legumes or things like that, because maybe their body's having a hard time with it. So it's very individual to the individual. Rest is super important. Our body needs really good quality sleep to repair. So again, supplementation is at the end of all of this. What can we do with our lifestyle, with the right diet, with the right rest, moving our body in a way that is helpful to it to get the metabolism going, but not so strenuous that we're causing more inflammation, especially when people see me, they're in a need to repair. There's something that's not right for them. So we get them through them. And then after, usually once we're good, sure, there may be a few things that we can do because we're, maybe they're not getting enough, eating a lot of fish, or maybe they're concerned about not wanting to eat too much of it because of mercury. There is a lot to be said about the quality of food that we have. And so we may need to make some other changes with it. Stress reduction, again, probably, if not, as equal important to diet is stress reduction. What are we putting on our bodies? What are, our makeup, our skincare? What are we using to clean our homes? All of those things are impacting how our body works, impacting inflammation in the body. So stress, as I said, I would hope, ideally, that we could use supplements sort of as a temporary basis. A lot of the probiotics and things we can get naturally. We can fermented foods if you don't have a fungal disorder, because if you do, you actually need to stay away from fermentation. But things that we can do, yogurts or kombuchas, or things like sauerkraut, or naturally fermented foods are great for our digestion and great for our skin. So yeah, support as needed.
Love that. Thank you for that added information. So, Claire, as we're wrapping up today, is there some advice, some words of wisdom that you'd like to leave with our audience as we're closing things up today?
Yeah, I think that whether, you're vegan or pescatarian or vegetarian or paleo or keto, all of these are great options as long as it's a great option for you. We all have different needs. Our bodies are genetically different. It could be depending on how we're using your body, seasonality. And so don't just accept one diet as the perfect diet for everyone. Be touch into yourself, maybe track. I have like what's the right diet tracker tools you can find on my website to see what is the right mix of proteins and fats and carbohydrates for you to feel your best, and then experiment with it. Look at there's different types of proteins, whether they're more the animal versus vegan. See where you feel best with, and that may change. And so just learn to observe your own body. Do you feel hungry? Are you feeling dragged down? Do you feel more energetic? Think of the food as fuel, and what's the right mix for you to feel your best.
Beautiful. Claire, thank you so much. What great
Thank you.
information. This has been awesome. And to our audience, I want you to add your comments below. You'll find Claire's contact information below. Feel free to check out her website and to reach out to her with this breadth of knowledge as to what it is that our bodies actually need and can utilize. That's why she's here today. And I just want to say thank you again, Claire.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
My pleasure.
And to our audience, remember, post your comments and let us know what you're taking away from this conversation. Share it and invite others to watch and listen, and let us know what you'd like to hear more about in the future. And remember that we're doing these shows consistently, and join us again for future episodes. Turn on your notifications, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and help us get the message out to let people know that you care as much as we care. And thanks again for joining us. Until next time, be well, live, love, and be a bigger positive impact maker in your world. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.